Hello, this is Scott Herbst, founder and president of Six Flex Training and Consulting, and you are listening to The Flex, a podcast where we have conversations with people who are expressing their leadership with the intention that it give you access to expressing yours. Today, I am really excited to have with me Adryon Ketcham. Adryon is the founder of Goals for Autism. They are an agency that provides in-home services and social skills groups in California, Nevada, and now Idaho. I am excited because Adryon and I actually go back several years, maybe 10 at this point. It's been a
Yeah.
while. And I actually, as well as we know each other, actually have never heard the story, Adryon, of how you started your company. And so I'm excited to start there. And I'm not going to share too much more about you. I'm going to let you do the talking. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm very excited to be here today. I think we have known each other close to 10 years. I would say probably 10.
Probably.
So I really appreciate this opportunity. I founded Goals for a few reasons. I was raised in a house with two parents in healthcare. My mom's a retired nurse of 40 years, and my dad was IT for an insurance company.
Hmm.
Or healthcare company, I should say. And I remember kind of growing up having questions about why they worked on Christmas and holidays. And my mom would say, because this is the job I picked, and people don't stop needing help on a holiday. And, um, so I think it was always like in my blood, maybe. My grandmother's also a nurse, was a nurse. So I really felt like healthcare is a human right and everybody deserves access.
Yeah.
And as autism and ABA started to grow, um, I noticed that some of the companies that I had worked for previously didn't want to provide services to people who needed translation or worked in certain areas. I'm from the Bay Area, and have always been some parts of the Bay Area that aren't, um, places that most people would want to like spend a lot of time in, I guess to say. And so I wanted to provide people with healthcare. And I still think, and I thought, that it was a good place to start by being a good business owner or a good CEO or a good human to my employees also. And I think you can do both. I think you can help people and you can um, be a good ethical business owner as well at the same time.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
thank
so
you.
you've been in business. I forget if you shared this here or if it was our pre chat.
I yeah,
16 years. Yes.
yeah, 16 years. It'll be 16 years in October. The
Yeah.
end of
So
October.
just say, will you say, talk for a couple minutes about what your experience has been like moving from the decision to open a business to now operating in three different states where I know the challenges are really different, just
Yeah.
legislatively and regulatory wise.
Yeah.
Say something
Um,
about your journey.
yeah, oh, I think when I opened it, I was, I don't want to say naive. I would say that I really, really, really just at the end of the day want to help people and I want to provide a really safe, wonderful place for people to work. This work is really hard and that has always kind of been my mission. And I think I opened the company without realizing what owning a business actually like entails. And I was like, I'm just going to provide services and everybody's going to work here and they're going to be happy and people will really be excited. Um, I think, some of my pitfalls have been that I'm probably an always optimistic overachiever. things will always work out. And if you say yes to something, which I do a lot, we'll figure out how to get there. And I think that that's been one of probably my biggest pitfalls, but also probably one of my best strengths is that I
Yeah.
am really resilient in trying to figure out the answer to a problem or solve
Yes.
solution based, right? Um, I don't know if I answered your question, but
Kind of. I mean, I can imagine that you said you say yes to a lot of things,
I do.
and that will take you in the direction of growth because
Yes.
like there's an opportunity. It's like, can you provide this? Yes. And then if you just say yes before you figured it out, then now
Yeah.
you're on the hook for something.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, now
And
you're going to show up.
it is like, um, okay, so now I gotta figure, and then you kind of like grow into what
Yes.
you said yes to,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so I think you're answering your question. Are there, what I'm curious about now, are there a couple places you could point to where you said yes that really stand out as I didn't know how we were going to fulfill that. I didn't
Yeah.
know what it would look like. I didn't know what the steps were that were really pivotal in your growth as an agency, or or maybe um, your growth as a CEO and as a leader.
Yeah. Uh, okay. Yeah. I think that one of the biggest pivotal moments in this company was probably going to Nevada.
Mm,
I said yes because someone that I know's family didn't have services and they were really struggling. And I had learned again, there's needs, so I'm gonna go figure out how to solve this.
yeah,
I learned that people weren't really able to get services because of the licensure law there.
yeah.
It still does kind of stand in the way, but you have to get pretty like flexible, I would say. And so,
Just to say something so our listeners are up to speed,
yeah,
there's,
oh yeah,
if I'm remembering correctly, the licensure law in Nevada is such that it's pretty difficult to hire and onboard the frontline therapists.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. In addition to becoming an RBT, you then have to get your license as an RBT, BCBA, or BCABA.
Yeah.
Um, and that's quite a process. And there used to be a provisional licensure law.
Hmm.
So that has made things a little less flexible. I've heard that they're trying to get that back, but
Yeah.
um,
And so that just makes it challenging and cumbersome to run a business there,
yeah, I
which
mean, we
tends to
have
be deterrent to people like you saying, yes, we're going to go into business in Nevada.
right. Yeah. And I didn't quite understand fully the licensure law until I got there.
Yeah.
Right, or exactly what that looks like as a business. And so I think that that has probably been one of the most pivotal things is really our Las Vegas location. We have locations in Reno too, but or we serve Reno and rural areas as well.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that that has been a really pivotal spot in my journey. I also took a step back from Nevada for a while in 2017, for
Yeah.
about 18 months. And I consider that to be a huge amount of growth because I looked around and said, I it's not working and we need to figure something else out. How can we make this work? Less of a I give up and I am not a quitter.
Yeah.
Horrifically resilient, if anything. And I consider that also to be a growth for me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
So what was it about going into Nevada and then pausing services for 18 months that would have you say that was the pivotal thing?
well, I mean, again, staffing is difficult, and we it made me have to think outside the box and figure out how to get creative without a professional licensure and how to um constantly be trying to think twice about how we're doing things there
Yeah,
specifically. Um and so I mean I think that that really was like a spot where I kind of first realized like, you know, your ideas and the things that you're committing to really do have an impact on a lot of other people. And I would say that that probably is a huge turning point for me and my career as a CEO.
got it. I'm going to point to a couple things, and
Yeah,
you can correct me if I misunderstood or if I'm putting words in your mouth.
yeah,
But and I'm going to relate it back to my own experience as well. I love what you said about saying yes to things and then figuring it out.
yeah,
I know that personally, that where I tend to get stopped and stuck in my own business is where I have to have it all figured it out before I take action.
yeah,
That is when I will fall into the trap of doing the same old things that maybe kind of work, but don't really, but like cut off growth or inhibit growth.
yeah,
And personally I've found places where like I do have an idea and I say I'm going to go for it, even though maybe I'm clear, like looking from here to there, that there's probably like 20 or 30 or 50, or I don't know how many steps, but the only steps I can see are like the next two or three.
yeah,
But then when I've done that, it's led somewhere new and interesting, right?
yeah.
Or it's like been a complete failure, but I learned something from the failure.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, yeah, again, like when things don't work out, that doesn't necessarily mean that you failed. Um,
yeah,
I I don't know who it was. I feel like maybe you potentially, but somebody else told me like it's never a failure, it's falling forward.
okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I sometimes I have to reframe things when I'm like, oh, we're failing. I was like, no, like this is a moment where you're gonna like sit with it and try to figure it out and figure out like what you need to take away from this,
yeah,
what's yours to keep and what's yours to hold on to, as well as, you know, what do we do next?
yeah, I love that.
So yeah, I
Yes,
think there is growth in not always having the right answer too.
yeah,
And I think that's kind of what I was trying to say when I was talking about, you know, initially when we first started in Vegas, because that's where we started in Nevada.
right.
Was like I didn't really fully comprehend. And it's just been a process of trying to be like, oh, that's something we need. Okay, let's go figure out how to get to that spot.
Awesome. Another thing I'm hearing is that you take your word pretty seriously.
I do. Yeah.
That if you say you're going to do something, you figure that out. And it's see, now you might not always know how you're going to keep your word, but once you've given it, it's like I'm going to keep that.
Yeah. Yeah, I take my word pretty seriously. I did a lot of work with you starting in like, I don't know, maybe 2018, 2019, um, with integrity
Yeah.
and um showing up when I say I'm going to show up, but
Yeah.
also being brutally honest when I'm like, I can't do this. I think there's this conception that you're a CEO. You always have to be perfect. You always have to address people correctly. And this is some of the work I did with you. I do it in therapy, you know. Um, also word of advice, get a therapist. Um,
That's
find a
great advice.
spot and get a therapist.
That's
Um,
great.
uh, I think that um yeah, I mean, like, it's okay to tell people that you're stressed or that, like, you don't want to run around and tell everybody that, like, the sky is falling and it's Chicken Little.
Just like throwing up on people.
Yeah, yeah, right. There's a level of like, which you do not want to do. But also I think that, like, really there's this conception that like every CEO is like um, a Mark Zuckerberg, as an example, and like, oh, they're like perfect and they have it together and there's like all these things and like they never don't know the answer or like, you know, um, they're never having a bad day. And I think sometimes in integrity, it's okay to make yourself a human being
Yeah.
and be like, this is not my day. I gotta circle back to this later,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and what I'm hearing there is that you take your word seriously, you don't always keep it. And when you don't keep it, you communicate around it.
Yes.
That,
And then you come
like,
up with a way where I
yeah,
can I
like a
can keep
level
it.
of like, I'm gonna at least break this promise responsibly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, and I think that's showing up for people, right?
Awesome. Yeah. Um, oh, there's a lot of good stuff in here. And this is a new podcast. We're still finding our way. But one thing that you've said that I haven't necessarily heard from other guests to this point is get a therapist.
Yeah.
And say a little bit about what that's provided for you in terms of being a business leader.
Yeah. Not to overshare or vomit all over people, for lack of a better example. I have a pretty chronic post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis
Mm,
um because of some um intimate partner violence that I experienced for a prolonged period of time. And I think part of me always saying yes is the part of me that was like, I survived. So like, let's just drink from the cup of life all we can.
mm,
Um, and so I got a therapist that way, but I realized how much of my work with relationships is impacted at work, and how much they are not two separate things, right?
yes.
There's a non-duality to them. Um,
Yes.
and so I really think that like having somebody to be like, I don't know how to navigate this situation. And as it relates to, I also have this response sometimes, relationally with people. Um, I've come to you with some of these things and you've really helped me out, but then I think there's that level of like I said, like relating and that is impacted by this other thing. And so it is very helpful because sometimes I can't tell the difference. And I think that goes for everybody. Like, is this me? I ask that a lot. Like, is it me?
Yeah.
Or like, am I really like this shouldn't be this way, right? And I think sometimes in saying yes, like so voraciously in life, um,
Yeah.
it's hard to set boundaries too for people, and especially as CEOs or as healthcare providers or as people who are trying to say yes to leadership. You're like, yes, 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 yes. Um, but you're not realizing that you're not able to set the best boundaries sometimes when you always say yes. And so having intentionality behind your yeses also, and therapy has helped me with that.
Okay, got it. And the things I really want to draw out are that, and I've heard this from many, many leaders, is that it can be kind of lonely. You didn't say this, but
It is. Yeah.
can feel lonely in that people are really looking at you to the answers. And I think in that environment, um, however you're geared, where people are looking to you for the answers, it's really easy to fall in the trap of like, I should have the answers.
Yeah.
And
100%.
um, and so one thing a therapist has provided you is just like having someone to talk to. And
Yes.
yeah, and provide some outside guidance.
Yes.
And I think that's valuable advice that probably if you're a leader of any kind, when you're managing a team, you're managing uh a division, you're like in charge of the whole organization, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that you want to have the people who you can go to and for counsel and advice. And if it's not a
Yes.
therapist, if
A
you're
mentor.
a clinical director, who's your regional director, who's your CEO? If you're a
Right.
CEO, how are you building a community of people who can give you a little outside perspective?
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree with you. I think that it does feel really lonely at times. And I think there is this idea that like we should all have it together.
Yes.
Like you said, and we should have all the answers. And I think sometimes it's important to remember that you're not necessarily an expert in everything, and that there are experts out there who can help you, guide you in the right way or find the right answers. I I absolutely believe, I mean, really, you should have a mentor and a therapist. Um, but I know mental health is something that not everybody gets access to. Um, just being in this field and knowing what wait lists look like and all of those things. So I consider myself to be incredibly privileged to have a mentors and a therapist, and being able to see the true value and like trying to find an expert who can help me find the answer to that or talk me through it or tell me I'm crazy.
Yeah. This is a great vein. I want to follow it a little further. How do you
Okay.
know what how do you know, or how have you learned to actually spot for yourself when, okay, I got this. Like, this is my decision. I got this, versus, you know what? I better talk to someone.
Um, I I don't always note ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you that. And I think sometimes in the moment I realize like this morning I was in a meeting, we were talking about recruiting and like the process of promoting someone from within.
Yeah.
And even after 16 years, we don't really have a good process for that. We're
Yeah.
just kind of like, oh yeah, you meet the criteria, we like you, like hang out longer. Uh,
Yes.
and so something that my recruiter and I and my our hiring manager and our training department we're talking about this morning, our training manager, was, I was like, oh, I think we should start to have people who want to move up apply for a job. And in that moment, my recruiter said to me, okay, so is this what you want to do? And I kind of was like, I don't want to make this decision. And I'm not sure exactly how this is working out. But I realized
Yeah.
in that moment when being asked, like, no, it's not just because I'm the CEO, it's because it made sense. And so I think sometimes listening to your gut, and
Mm,
being like, yeah, I can do this versus like, I don't know the first thing about this, but I want to do it, is when you start to think outside the box of people to access and talk to.
awesome. I've a couple more questions for
Yeah,
you.
this is fun.
Uh, First, is there anything about your journey that you want to share, or, looking at the ground we've covered, would be really valuable for an aspiring leader to know?
Anything about my journey that I want to share for an aspiring leader? Um, yeah, make time for yourself.
Mm,
Do the things that make you happy. Like not only in terms of mentorship and like if you can have access to a therapist and things like that. Um, but um go for that walk. Do the workout in the morning. Um, and try to enjoy things in the moment as much as possible. You know, I think a lot of us get stuck with I have to do this, I have to do this.
yeah.
And sometimes when I'm like walking my dogs, I have two dogs. You might hear one of them in the background, 70-pound English bulldog, snoring away. But sometimes when I'm walking them, I just take a minute and I look at the trees,
Yeah.
and the color of the sky. And
Yes.
I think meditation. And that is an action of meditation. And I think meditation is so unbelievably helpful, even if you're not good at the quiet in the brain. I think it's always a good practice to remember those moments, to stay present.
Yeah. Okay. And this leads to another question if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard that from a number of leaders as well, is to make time for yourself. Do you have, because I know the pull to like that one more thing, or and there's
Yeah.
an infinite well of one more things, right?
Right.
You could always be doing as a leader. Even if you got everything on your to-do list done, there would be that next idea that would you like, oh, cool, I'm done. I can finally, that idea I've had in the back,
Yeah.
right? Uh,
Another project.
yeah. Is there anything that you could say to that has helped you protect that time for yourself and really honor that while being pulled in 3 or 5 or 7 different directions?
Yeah. I put it on my calendar.
Brilliant.
I have intention to put it on my calendar, even if it's something as little as paying um a bill. It goes on my calendar
Awesome.
so that I ensure I take care of myself. Because that's an act of taking care of yourself.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. How is that an act of taking care of yourself? I see
Well,
it. I want you to explain it to.
yeah, yeah. If you can't
Yeah.
pay, if you're not okay, if you're not staying up on your bills, right? Like, okay, we're CEOs, but we're not talking about like millions and billions of dollars where we can hire other people to take care of our finances, personal finances.
Right.
Um, it's gonna feel really yucky when you start getting phone calls because you forgot to pay a bill.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't want to experience that yuck if I don't have to. And so if I put it on my calendar to like, best example for me is like copays with FSA. So I just put it on my calendar, like pay, and I write out the specific thing that I'm supposed to be paying so I don't get there and then like look at this pile of mail in front of me and be like, oh, this is so overwhelming,
Yes.
and get stuck in the like, oh, I should have done this sooner. And then there's like this loop, right? Um,
Yeah.
you know, and I think that's an act of self-care. I think that sometimes things that like we miss in terms of talking about self-care too. It's not just like having a bubble bath. It's literally like, okay, I need to order my dog's food delivery, you know? And those are acts of self-care because they're gonna help you be present for everything else that you have in your life. And when you're really busy and there's always one more thing to do, you really need to stay present in all of those moments.
That
Life is
is
short.
so good. I love that.
Thanks.
All right, second to last question. What's your next challenge? And you could say, here's how where I want to take my business. What I always love is when people share, how you're looking to grow and develop. Like what's your
Yeah.
next challenge by way of your own expansion as a person? But anything you want to share about that?
Yeah. Business wise, I would like to see us kind of grow a little bit larger, but not too large. Um, and that it means really facilitating new leaders in our agency and showing up for them and kind of trying to incorporate what I've learned so that they don't make the same mistakes I did, although I feel like falling forward is always important.
Yeah.
And then personally for me, um, I would really like to start to make a little bit more time for the people that I love the most. I like I said, life is short and I realize my parents may not be here much longer.
Yeah.
And I would really like to start to be able to make time for the moments that they ask for instead of looking at it as another chore.
Yes.
It's really personal, but um, you know, it's just so important to be around the people you love.
Awesome. Last question.
Yeah.
How can people reach you?
Oh, you can reach me on my email, Ketcham, Aketcham at goals, GOALS, for autism.com. I'm also on Instagram under Adryon Ketcham,
Wonderful.
or our goals Instagram. We have a goals Instagram.
Uh, Adryon, I so appreciate it. I never got to hear your story before.
I
So
appreciate
that
this
was just
too.
really wonderful. And I just so appreciated how vulnerable and open you were about what it's taken for you to grow an agency and to,
Thank
provide
you.
services across 3 states. So thank you so much for being here.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to listen to all of your podcasts.
Awesome. Everyone, this concludes this episode of The Flex. Thank you for listening, and we will see you back here next time.